If you really want to understand Uganda, you've got to start with the land itself. I mean, it's so much more than just a pretty backdrop. We're talking about a country whose entire story, its culture, its economy, even its future, is written right into its dramatic geography, from a really violent geological past to all of its abundant water. So yeah, let's dig in.
Okay, so take a look at this. At first glance, you might think, hey, is that the Alps or maybe the Rockies? But nope, this is Mount Rwenzori in Uganda, smack dab on the equator. And what you're seeing are actual glacial features, these sharp pyramid-like peaks and deep valleys carved out by ice. It's just incredible, right? And this landscape, it's our first big clue about the massive, powerful forces we're going to dive into, forces that literally built this nation from the ground up.
All right, so our story really kicks off with fire. We're talking about the immense geological power that forged this entire landscape.
So it all boils down to one key concept, tectonicism. And what is that? Well, basically, it's just the huge, large-scale processes that move and break up the Earth's crust. Think of it like the planet's engine for building mountains and valleys. And in Uganda's case, that engine was seriously in overdrive. So how did this all go down? Well, picture this. You've got these two massive forces just pulling the land apart, right? Tearing it in opposite directions. As the crust stretches and gets weaker, it starts to crack, and a huge block in the middle just collapses downward. And what you get is the Great Rift Valley, this absolutely colossal trench that slices right through western Uganda. It's the feature that defines the entire landscape.
And of course, all that tearing and stretching, well, it had a fiery side effect. Wherever the crust got thin, magma from deep below pushed its way up to the surface. This is why the landscape is dotted with these huge volcanoes like Mount Elgon, and even things like explosion craters and hot springs. It's a land that was truly forged by both fire and fracture.
So out of that incredibly violent past, you get this stunningly diverse canvas. We're talking everything from towering peaks to vast, sprawling wetlands. And the result of having these mountains is just remarkable, because the altitude changes so dramatically you can literally travel through multiple climates in a single day. You could start your morning in a savanna, climb up through a lush tropical rainforest, pass through a bamboo zone, and then find yourself in this strange misty moorland, all before you even hit the bare rock and ice at the very top. It's like walking from the equator to the Arctic Circle, but you're just going straight up. And if you zoom out from the mountains, you see that same kind of diversity playing out across the whole country. You've got these lush tropical forests, huge wetlands, vast savanna grasslands, and even semi-desert areas way up in the northeast. So it's not one single type of environment at all. It's more like a patchwork quilt of many different landscapes all stitched together. All this crazy geological activity also created the perfect containers for water. I mean, those deep floors of the Rift Valley, they filled up and became lakes like Albert and Edward. And then the center of the country actually warped upwards, which created the huge, shallow basin that holds Lake Victoria. And connecting everything is this massive network of rivers, including the Nile, of course, and these enormous swamps that basically act as the country's lungs. Okay, so we've got the physical landscape down. Now, let's connect all of this to the people who actually call this place home. I mean, how does a landscape this dramatic really shape human life? And it's a really fascinating question, isn't it? How can these geological events that happened millions of years ago still decide where a family today builds their house or plants their crops, or even where they go to seek a better life?
Well, you just have to look at a population map and the answer becomes pretty clear. People do not spread out evenly, not at all. They cluster in the places where the geography gives them what they need. So you see these really dense populations around the Lake Victoria Crescent, where there's reliable rain, and up in the highlands, where those ancient volcanoes left behind that incredibly rich, fertile soil.
Right, and this pattern isn't just a snapshot in time. It's an active, ongoing thing. People are constantly migrating. They're moving from the drier, less productive parts of the country towards those same dense, fertile areas we just talked about, and the cities that have grown up there. Think about that. They are literally, today, following the resources that geology laid down for them millions of years ago. It's amazing.
And that connection goes even deeper when we start talking about money. Uganda's entire economy is, at its core, built on harnessing the natural wealth that its unique geography provides.
So, let's start with agriculture. It's the absolute backbone of the nation, and it is completely shaped by the land. You've got coffee and tea thriving in those high-altitude volcanic soils we mentioned. Sugarcane does great in the warm, wet areas near the big lakes. This huge variety of crops you see, it's a direct reflection of the country's diverse landscapes.
And that link between geology and wealth, it runs deep. I mean, the very same volcanic activity that created all that fertile soil for farming also embedded valuable minerals right into the rock. We're talking copper and cobalt out in the west, limestone in the east. The wealth is literally in the rocks. But it's not just about farming and mining. The geography powers so much more. Those fast-flowing rivers coming down from the mountains, perfect for hydroelectric power. The Great Lakes, they support a huge fishing industry. Those stunning Rift Valley and savanna landscapes, they've become national parks that are total magnets for tourists. Oh, and the forests provide essential timber. It's all connected, a completely integrated system.
But, and there's always a but, right? This incredibly deep reliance on the land creates a real tension. It becomes this delicate balancing act between using all these amazing resources today and making sure they're still there for the future.
And one of the biggest challenges starts right in those densely populated, fertile areas we talked about. See, as the population grows, a family's land gets divided among their children, and then their children, and it happens again and again. So what was once a decent-sized family farm can end up as a bunch of tiny, scattered plots, and that makes it incredibly difficult to farm efficiently, let alone use any kind of modern machinery.
And then there's Uganda's greatest resource, water. It really is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's the absolute lifeblood of the nation. It gives them rain for farming, it gives them power. But on the other hand, those same beautiful lakes can become dumping grounds for industrial waste, they can be barriers to transportation, and they can even become a source of conflict with neighboring countries over who gets to use that water.
So all of these pressures, a growing population, the need for economic growth, they're creating some pretty significant environmental challenges. Forests are being cleared for fuel and farmland. Farming on those steep hillsides is causing major soil erosion. Swamps are being drained to make room for new settlements. And of course, the lakes themselves are under the constant threat of being overfished.
And all of this really leaves us with this central question for Uganda's future. You know, the land has given them this incredible foundation of wealth and opportunity. It's a true gift. But as more and more people come to depend on that very same finite foundation, the real challenge becomes, how do you build a prosperous future without eroding the very thing that made it all possible in the first place?